This is the second part of my story. Before the Valentine's Day we received a bad opinion saying that there wasn't enough photos of one of the products and the customer wasn't exactly sure what arrived. I learned already that you have to always show every detail and you can never lie. If I remember exactly, I called them and he said it was posted in a moment. They actually forgot about it and will delete the opinion, but a week has passed and the comment was still on. This affected our sales drastically. As I mentioned, I was pretty tired, spent 1.5 months in my apartment, wanted to finally move somewhere. I looked up the address of the client and decided to head there in the meantime as well, to see for myself what's actually wrong, if he lets me in, of course. It was near the border of Poland again, Bieszczady. Around that time I have received a phone message that some package is being delivered in Tarnów. This was exactly south of me. I didn't order anything, by the way. When I called the carrier company, they replied they can't share the exact address and it's possible the store put a wrong number. Eventually I headed down that way. Meanwhile I checked up on my employer's town, went to see the delivery department. Really nice people. I wasn't planning on coming, but they let me in. We talked a bit. I informed them that I may be going to one of the clients who wasn't satisfied with the order. They said it's not worth my energy, but when I decide something I usually do it, so I stayed up overnight in one of the hotels. From out there I had a train schedule in the morning to Sanok. The problem which I didn't notice was that I had only 5 minutes to hop on another train. Buying this transfer ticket was a mistake. The train with different plates arrived. Even though I could get on it as it was heading in the same direction, I waited for the correct one, which got late. By the time I arrived to Tarnów, the second train for Sanok already went away. At the train station some woman has told me that there is a bus heading that way. So I walked to the nearest bus stop. Eventually saw a man, asked him, and he said that buses are not going over there and she really had no clue. So I started looking up for the taxi. The man said that he has a friend who could pick me up, called him up, but it turned out he had a night shift so couldn't arrive that day. I looked up online and noticed the numbers again. I've said I actually didn't call up this company. The guy on the bus stop tried instead. They answered with a price 2 times higher than usual. I found a taxi, I think for about 200 zlotys, which he said was probably the best deal out of this for almost 150 kilometers. It cost me a lot, but I promised myself to get there no matter what. The taxi driver arrived later. There was a traffic jam. He even sent me a message about it on phone. The road was 2 hours long, so he had a lot to talk about. He started telling me how he was delivering medications throughout Europe. Said he visited almost every country. Apparently in Spain got checked up by the police the most often because of his plates. Said that they are not just in Poles that much, and there's a new law now that they can even stop you for holding your phone in hands while driving. He told me how tasty the water in Sweden is. Apparently it comes from the rivers and glaciers and you can drink it straight from the tap. Told me how immigrants are being transferred to England through the La Manche tunnel and how sometimes random people would have asked him if they can come with him before he was about to pass through. He's been saying that even though the work was stressful at times and had some expensive stuff to carry, he was keep doing it because he felt like he's helping sick people. I don't know how it happened, but he started telling me about his family, how he was fighting with his drunk father once he got attacked by him with a knife. He had to punch him back and counter-attack in defense. I'm not sure, but I think he said that training martial arts helped him a lot. His father went into hospital but recovered. Even though he knows the family is the most important thing, he said he had to defend himself and there was no way around. He also had told me how he was betting a lot. I don't know if this is true, but At some point he was one of the top in the country and people would have recognized him a lot. One time he betted and lost a significant amount of money. Said that this last year his friends, which were the organizers at that time, invited him for a party and told him straight up he was supposed to win that day, but they all set it up for him to lose. He told me he was kinda pissed hearing that, but this was years ago, couldn't do much now and wasn't even mad at them anymore. We had a lot of talks. When I exited I didn't even regret taking that taxi. He said I can always contact him on that number. I arrived to the town. From there I was planning on heading down to Lesko, where the client's supposed to be. I've gotten a main date for not wearing a mask at the gallery. Didn't want to argue, the policeman was pretty genuine and said he's going to be my souvenir. I also noticed there's a church over there on the main square. Wanted to get in but it was closed. I waited for a bus, got in and arrived soon after. While exiting I asked some man if there's a viewpoint somewhere around here. He told me to go up a bit and then take a second turn on the right. So I went that way, saw two guys, asked them if this is the right way, they told me it is, and there also should be a cross at the top. As I was going further, eventually I saw a crossroad. I didn't know which way to take, went straight ahead and saw a man with his dog. And this is the interesting thing, he tells me he lives here since a kid and if I want to get on top I have to go back and take the road on the left. I said I was actually wondering which way to go, so I went back, took the road on the left, went up the hill and turns out everything is overgrown. There was a bit of snow but I wasn't giving up even though I only had my Adidas boots, which wasn't too clever. They actually are much better than you would think. I went through and at the end there was a fence. I didn't see a cross anywhere around but I saw a man down the hill near the apartments. I started shouting where it is and he told me I gotta go back around where I came from. Turns out I was going the right way previously. What that taught me is that sometimes you gotta listen to your own instinct. The way up the hill was pretty steep, there wasn't any roads as well. I've managed to get there before the sundown, called up my father to ask what he's doing and tell him where I am and then I prayed for a few minutes. This wasn't even my plan to get up here. When I was going back I noticed there was a better way actually from the other side of the hill which I could have taken. So I called up the client but he wasn't responding. While I was going down I asked two men who were talking by the fence what's the best place to stay overnight. They recommended the castle nearby. I've said I haven't seen it yet but would love to check it out. The same two men I saw previously happened to be on my way as well. Asked me if I have managed to get on top of the hill. I told them I had some problems but eventually I found my way. A couple of minutes later I was by the cemetery. Some man was cutting up the wood. I walked by and said that this might sound weird but I came here to see if there's a chance to speak with one of the clients and if he knows the area. He said I gotta go down a bit and we'll see the apartments. We talked for about half an hour. He said he has a grandfather in Warsaw actually and next time if he's there we can always meet up. Gave me his number, told me to be optimistic and wish me good luck, even though I haven't got any expectations. So I found the apartment. Some woman outside just went out to smoke a cigarette. I asked her if I can get in. She said there's no intercom and everything is open, so that's not an issue, which was actually surprising. The client wasn't calling back still. I thought I would just knock on the front door. I don't have anything to lose. If he doesn't want to talk, I will leave. I did exactly that. A woman opened the door. Turns out this was the wife of the client. I've said I came to visit the area and meanwhile I wanted to see if there's a chance to discuss what was wrong with the device, so we can always improve the offer and maybe send something back. She told me he was about to delete the opinion, but after I've sent the phone message with a reminder he changed his mind. She called him herself, he answered, and you could hear through the speaker and see by her face that he wasn't happy that I came. They were talking a bit, eventually she hung up, said her husband is at the work right now and it's not even worth staying, it will only make things worse. I asked her if there is a chance she could talk eventually with him after he's back. She said she will see, but I shouldn't expect anything and the negative opinion will probably stay. I didn't want to bother her, exited disappointed, but soon after, and this is the interesting thing that happened, a random number is calling me. I answer, and this was the guy saying complete opposite thing of what she was saying. He said I shouldn't have worried and insisted he will delete the opinion, I just have to tell him how. He told me he has some experience with people, he's a judge at the court, that there will be always someone who's not happy and I should get used to that. Also told me that phone message was unnecessary. I've said every opinion matter for us. This also affected the sales and how our customers perceive us. This was only my initiative, I didn't expect anything really. I asked him about his email, entered the castle, but I couldn't access the internet. Literally had to sit by the window, but eventually sent him a message what he should do. To delete, he had to contact the chat and confirm himself that the issue has been resolved. He did, I thanked him and soon went to sleep. This was the room I was in. If I remember correctly, it costed me about 100 zlotys. The next morning I walked around the castle a bit. It was a pretty interesting place, I must say. They were cooking a breakfast, but I wasn't that hungry. Already have learned that breakfast isn't the most important meal of the day. I headed my way, it was pretty cold. The sun was setting up, I managed to take this cool picture during that time. This was on Sunday, so I also went for a Sunday's mass at the church. After that, finally started heading back home. The buses wouldn't come here too often. Someone suggested to ask for a pickup at the gas station. I didn't. First man I asked gave me a ride back to Sanok. We talked a bit, I told him I arrived here from Warsaw. He was really surprised that he's a teacher. I said I'm working remotely, which is cool, but sometimes it gets taxing when you constantly think about it. I visited the chocolate museum at Sanok. Of course had to ask for the chocolate, they had one with cinnamon, it was pretty good. Then I ate a sandwich, even though it tasted good, had a lot of vegetables and some meat. I wasn't feeling too great after that. Eventually managed to came back home with a train transfer through Krakow. So even though I was sitting all the time at my apartment, every week something would have come up. We needed to translate some of the instructions we got, so I called up one guy who did some translations for me years ago. He said he's actually not dealing with the devices, and for that I need someone with technical knowledge. One day the owner of the apartment came. We were about to discuss how much longer I will stay. I asked him how his work, and then he says he doesn't have too many orders currently. Now he's looking how to advertise himself. He usually works for bigger companies and sometimes had projects, and wait for that, to translate that would take him half a year. I started laughing that I actually need a translator. He says that he's been translating Chinese English for many years. Started doing it about 30 years ago and has a pretty good experience in that. I did some stuff myself previously. Asked him to check it up and make some corrections. He said that I did a good job and was impressed, which was very nice to hear. Eventually did one translation as well, completely from the scratch. When I saw it, I was so happy with the result, couldn't believe. The help literally came into my room this one day, like it was supposed to happen. Later on, he also sent a brief explanation to my employer about the reason for the price he offered. This was pretty cool to see, he had some really good points. Around that time we were about to put a video ad for some products. I came up with an idea to record some scenes myself, so we could publish it on the channel eventually as well. I was always interested in filmmaking, but never had a chance to record any products really. I had a Canon camera in my home I mentioned previously, so one day I grabbed it and brought to my apartment to see what I can do. I did some scenes from outside the window, showing the different parts of the day. A quick comparison with my Canon camera so you can see the quality of the video. I had it all set up, even brought a measure from my neighbor to show the screen width. I also turned on the lamp and did some scenes at night with the reflections. Did a quick unboxing with all of the items and cables you could find in. I wanted to include it all in a short 1.5 minute video. Everything was recorded besides the most important, the footage from the car. I don't have one, needed a driver as well, and at that time didn't have anyone to record this with. We are on good terms with the apartment owner, so one day we tried it in his car, but we did it only for a few minutes as he was busy. He suggested to maybe ask someone in family. My father has a almost 25 years old Toyota Corolla. When I came to him, he told me the lighter black is broken in his car, so I called up one of my really old friends from high school. He said he will come on the weekend, but eventually ignored me and didn't even reply. Sunday came around. For some reason I remember my uncle was into that stuff. I haven't seen him in years. When I was a kid he used to always come up to me, help me repairing my console or some other stuff. I could always count on him. I called him up and he said he will arrive the same day, right after the church's mass. He said that he actually received one car recorder for a present and recently plugged it in, so knows some stuff already. He lives by himself nearby and is kind of a loner, just like I am. We drove to the forest in my hometown and had a nice little talk. Probably the calmest person in my family.
Bierzesz to właśnie tak w tą stronę bardziej, żeby kamerkę tą z przodu.
A no właśnie, no racja. Żeby to pokazać, tak? Że to nagrywa?
No właśnie, coś.
Nawet
Coś w tym stylu. Ta sama pilarka. Husqvarna kosztowała 1600 zł, a partner 690. I jedno i drugie to jest, można powiedzieć, Husqvarna, tylko się nazwą. Husqvarna wystawiła swój produkt pod nazwą partner.
At night I looked up the footage and turns out there was this flickering, so I couldn't use the video at all. The next day I called him up again, saying that we gotta re-record it, and he answered that his car is in the workshop right now. Something to do with a steering wheel. I said, alright, we'll do it when it's repaired. He called me up a day after that everything works now and he has a bit of time. I quickly grabbed everything, got into the car, I tried to record, and then the error with memory card appears. He says this might have happened because I wouldn't put this in gently, so I take it out and put it back in. He was all calm about it, complete opposite of me. We try with his card, but it doesn't detect it as well. He laughs and says it might to do something with the pins in the device. I said nothing will surprise me anymore. We drove back to the apartment. I couldn't figure out what was the cause. Literally a night before it was all recording well. I have all of these photos because I was sending some of these to my employer. I called up the nearest service. They said it might take a few days to replace the pin input if it's broken. I always try to remember it's better to choose from a few different options than go with the first one, so just to make sure I called up the different place and they said to bring it in and they will see what's up first. I went in, handed them over the video recorder and the card I was using. I said it was working a few days before and now it suddenly stopped, even though the same card is still being detected by my notebook. This is another one of those things. The guy had a few different micro SD cards. Choice one, it didn't work. Choice the second one, it was not being detected as well. So he opened the new one straight from the package, from the exact same producer. It wasn't working too. He finally grabbed his old one from his pocket he used, also the exact same, from the same producer, and it was being detected. I raised my eyebrows in disbelief, grabbed my phone and took some photos. He said that they might be lying on the speech, but can't explain exactly what was the reason. I said I finally got to finish this, so bought his one for 10 zlotys, said thanks and left. The last day of the week I visited home and told my mother I met up with the uncle and we spent a nice weekend together. There was the Annunciation to the Blessed Virgin Mary in 2 days. I said I will probably be going to Jasna Góra. This is one of the known shrines here in Poland. To be honest, around that time I thought this was the name of the city, but it was the name of the monastery in Częstochowa, which she actually had told me. For some reason I just wanted to visit the place, was keep hearing a lot about it, also simply as an appreciation for what happened to me. Still had hopes as well I would finally meet this man again I got in contact with last year. Often enough, bad things lead to something more important or serve as a lesson. I notice it now, basically because all of these problems with the footage. I had a chance to speak more with my uncle. He arrived again at the end of the week. We finally recorded the footage, spoke a bit, and he told me some stuff about his health issues he was dealing with. I told him about the retina detachments, the pain I experienced and what had helped me. He listened and said how this one time he went to this Ayurvedic or Chinese doctor in our town. She only looked at his eyes and tongue and just by that told him his condition. It was a few years ago. He recently went to a normal doctor again and they diagnosed him with exactly what she said would have happened. He told me she advised him to drink these herbal teas and infusions back then to help me out with his issues. This woman apparently had patients for years and helped diagnose a lot of the problems. I've said maybe I should come and visit her as well at some point. We had a lot of footage of the camera mounted on the mirror, the actual recording and also some scenes from the back camera. Everything was finally done. I stayed up for longer. The video still wasn't finished, but I sent it to my employer anyway to evaluate before I go. The next morning I woke up earlier and got into a train to Częstochowa. It's actually not that far from Warsaw. I arrived there pretty quickly. Looked up at the Google Maps and headed towards Jasna Góra. On my way there I saw these numbers again, so I took a photo, of course. I went up, asked some man if there's going to be a mass over there. He said it's actually in the church 2 kilometers away and I have to go back. Instead of saying I gotta go straight ahead, he told me the general direction. I got lost a bit, went around, but eventually arrived. I took some photos right before sundown and after. Got into the church, later on also went to see this big cathedral. The same night I noticed this girl alone just keep walking down the sidewalk. For some reason I was wondering if she's actually been going back where I came from, to Jasna Góra. And maybe there's something happening over there right now. I went there again and at the exact same time I arrived I saw tons of people walking around with candles. There was a ceremony. I joined in and went together with them into the monastery. It was a pretty great experience. About an hour later, just as I was leaving, I saw the gate that people went through was already locked. I really got in on time. I stayed overnight in one of the hotels, paid about 100 zloty for this. They were giving these traveling guides. The receptionist told me straight away that besides the church, cathedral and the monastery, there's not as much stuff to see around here. Next morning I got into a chocolate bar. I always love drinking it early in the morning. They've also had some cinnamon, which made it even better. Together with it they were giving a cup of water, the only time I saw something like that. Apparently you are supposed to drink it at the end because chocolate itself is very dense. I was walking around again for a bit, saw another Ford Mustang passing by me, so quickly grabbed the phone and took a photo. This is also the sidewalk that goes straight from Jasna Góra to the church I mentioned before. Sometime later I noticed there was this collection of photos to see outside, and one thing caught my eye. This is the panoramic sight of Rome on the day of the funeral of Pope John Paul II. Apparently the sky was red that day. I asked a man standing by if this was Photoshop, but he said he doesn't have a clue. I had to go already, so I bought a ticket online and sat down outside in front of the train station. Still had an hour or so before the arrival. Shortly after, this homeless man comes by. He wasn't even hiding it. He straight up asked me if I have any money for him for the alcohol. I've said I'm biased against it because of my family that was having a lot of problems with it, but we can always at least talk if he wants to. He sat down next to me. I don't exactly remember what we were talking about. I guess he was keep asking to give him anything. But this was the interesting thing. His friend came in and told me to not give him anything. I laughed and said I don't have much money anyway. This first guy went away. I asked his friend if they are willing to start doing anything. He said that he's been working in Norway as a builder and they paid him well, but eventually went back here and started a business with one of his friends. Also helped building a home for his daughter. Eventually his friends stopped paying the taxes for some reason and they had to close up the business. Now he doesn't feel like going back to it, but if he wants, he can start the work in this field anytime really. He told me this weird story how he had a cat and a dog in his house. His wife was apparently making up stories that the dog is scaring the cat and they can't keep him anymore in the house. He was really close to him, had him for years, said if she doesn't want to keep the dog he will leave home. Eventually he grabbed some money and did exactly that. He sat next to me and was telling me this with tears in his eyes, how this dog was like a friend to him. He also said that one day he went into coma. He had this vivid dream that he was walking down the street and was seeing all of these beautiful houses around. It was so peaceful and felt real, but eventually they woke him up. He started feeling the pain again and wanted to come back. He says he doesn't care if I believe him or not. Was practically sure that what he saw was real. We were talking for about half an hour. I still had some time, but even a homeless man was already tired of me. Said that he's grateful I listened to him and went the other way. So I got into a train. Some guy in front of me was laying on the seats. I didn't want to disturb him, but eventually he woke up. No one was saying anything, so I thought I will ask if he can say what he thinks about my video presentation I done. The guy laughed, said that I have come to the right place. He's on the way back from one of the filming sets in Wrocław. He says he's studying film school in Warsaw and has an experience working with multiple video editing programs. He gave me some suggestions what he would change, but overall was very impressed about the presentation. I couldn't believe I went on Jasna Góra just as an appreciation for all of the things that happened. And just as I was coming back, I met this guy. He gave me his contact info, also said that they are looking for a video game tester at the company he works for and I could always apply.